I didn't see the kick coming. One minute, I was bending down to unplug the vacuum. The next, my sister's heel slammed into my face so hard it knocked me sideways. Something inside my cheek cracked. Blood filled my mouth before I could even process what happened. I clutched my face and dropped to the floor. The carpet smelled like dog hair, old sweat, and dust. I could feel the vibration of my mother's footsteps from down the hallway, sharp and careless, like she was annoyed already. "Jesus, Clara," my sister groaned, adjusting the strap on her heel. "Why are you always in the damn way?" She stood over me, brushing lint off her perfect jeans. Her left shoe had a small scuff near the toe, probably from my jaw. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from "Where are you watching this video?" "What happened now?" Mom barked, rounding the corner. She was still wearing her silk robe, hair up in a towel. One hand carried her phone, the other her coffee. "She just flung herself into my foot," my sister said with a straight face. "I didn't," I started, voice muffled through blood and shock. "You're lucky she didn't break her heel," Mom snapped. I looked up from the floor, expecting at least a sliver of concern. Instead, she walked over, crouched down, and shoved one of my sister's shoes toward my face. "Smell it." I blinked. "What?" "Smell it," she repeated, calm as ever. "That's what filth like you should be good at. If you're gonna be on the floor, act the part." "Mom," I said, trying to sit up, but her hand came down hard on the back of my neck. "Don't embarrass yourself. You're lucky she even wears shoes you'll never afford." "I didn't do anything," I whispered. She scoffed. "Exactly. You never do. Not for this house, not for your sister. You just exist like a shadow and expect to be treated like light." My sister laughed. My teeth ached. She let go. I stayed there on the floor for another full minute after they left, listening to them complain about the carpet, the power bill, my voice, my breathing, my existence. I crawled to the bathroom, locked the door, and stared at myself in the mirror. I was 25. Not 10, not 16, 25. And still, somehow, I was the footstool in a house I partially paid rent for. I held 2 jobs, worked weekends, paid half the groceries, and got treated like I was stealing space just by waking up. I cleaned the blood off with cheap paper towels. My jaw throbbed, my gums swollen, but I didn't cry. I never cried anymore. I just made a list. Not on paper, in my head. Of every time they'd done this. Of every time I'd been called worthless, dramatic, lazy, or disgusting. Every time I'd been hit and told I asked for it. Every time I gave up silence in exchange for less pain. I didn't tell anyone, because people don't believe you when you look like you're functioning. They assume you're lying if you're not curled up in a corner. But Miss Tina at the diner knew something was wrong. She didn't say it outright, but I caught her watching me fold napkins with my left hand because my right wrist was too sore. "You need help getting out?" she asked one night while we closed. I looked up, startled. "Out of what?" She didn't blink. "Out!" I laughed. It sounded weird, like I forgot how. "No, I'm fine." She just nodded and handed me a plastic bag with food wrapped inside. "People like you never are, but you're still standing. That counts for something." I didn't eat that food. I saved it in my mini fridge like a trophy. Not because I needed it, but because someone saw me. That week, things got worse at home. My sister started locking her door and leaving passive-aggressive notes if I touched her things, even though we shared a bathroom. Mom got into another mood and stopped speaking to me entirely unless she needed her Amazon returns dropped off. Then came the final straw. I walked into the living room one evening and found Mom holding a pair of my shoes, the cheap gray ones I used for my second job. "They smell like sadness," she said, wrinkling her nose. "They smell like work," I said flatly. She turned to my sister. "Throw them out." Rachel smiled. "Gladly." I took one step forward. "Don't touch my stuff." Mom's eyes narrowed. "Or what?" I didn't respond. I just picked up my shoes and walked them quietly to my room. I locked the door behind me and sat down with them in my lap. Then I picked up my notebook. I hadn't written in months. Not since I stopped journaling to focus on healing. But healing was a joke in a house built to reopen wounds. I turned to a blank page and wrote one sentence. If they treat you like filth, let them learn what filth can become. That night, I didn't sleep. I read everything I'd ever written in that notebook, every insult, every injury, every moment they said I wasn't enough. And by sunrise, I had a plan. It wasn't revenge. Not yet. It was just freedom, one piece at a time. And when the time came, I wouldn't raise my voice. I'd raise the truth and let it destroy them in silence. I didn't make a sound the next morning. Not when Rachel banged on the bathroom door and yelled that I'd left toothpaste in the sink. Not when Mom screamed from the kitchen about the garbage being a little too full for her liking. I just got dressed, tied my shoes the same ones they tried to throw out, and left for work. But I wasn't heading to the diner. I was heading to a place they never thought I'd go, the local legal aid center. They offered help for women stuck in complicated home situations. I told the lady behind the desk that it wasn't physical, not like what people imagine. I didn't have broken bones or bruises today, but I couldn't breathe in my own house. She nodded like she'd heard that 1,000 times, because she probably had. She asked if I had any evidence. I opened my phone. I had voice recordings. From the hallway. From under my bedroom door. From the night Mom called me a roach with rent and told Rachel, let her rot, she's not marriage material anyway. The caseworker leaned back slowly and exhaled. You have options. I don't want to sue, I said. I want out, but I want them to feel it. She smiled. Then let's get creative. By the end of the week, I had a temporary P.O. box, a part-time studio rental, and a burner email address. None of it in my real name. I didn't run. I was setting the stage. Back at the house, Mom started unraveling. The blog she ran, Home Harmony with Helen, was getting fewer clicks. One of the brands she worked with quietly dropped her after an anonymous email pointed out that she regularly posted advice on gentle parenting while screaming at her adult daughter to lick the floor she walked on. The screenshots didn't lie. Rachel, meanwhile, was busy trying to get brand deals as a lifestyle influencer. I knew she edited her body in photos. I knew she lied about most of her partnerships. So I did what any silent ghost would do. I created a fake influencer brand, just a shell, a site, a form. I invited her to collaborate and asked her to submit her stats for a potential paid campaign. She sent it all numbers, back-end screenshots, contact lists, edited proofs of engagement. And I forwarded the entire package to Instagram's business fraud department. 2 weeks later, her page was flagged. Then shadow banned. Then frozen for investigation. She screamed into the hallway for 2 straight hours, swearing at the Wi-Fi, at me, at her phone. I was in my room packing a bag of essentials. I wasn't afraid. Because now, they couldn't touch me. Every dollar I earned from then on went to a private account they couldn't access. I switched shifts, worked doubles, did whatever I had to. Then came the moment I'd been waiting for. One night I came home and the house was dark, dead quiet. I walked into the kitchen and found Mom sitting at the table, hair undone, phone face down. "Where have you been?" she asked. "Work." She tilted her head. "You've been different." I didn't answer. "You think you're better than this house now?" "I think I've always been better than what you saw." Her lip curled. "No matter what you do, you'll never be her." "I know," I said. "Thank God." She slapped the table. "Don't talk back to me. I gave you life." "No," I said, picking up my keys. "You gave me trauma and a closet full of apologies you never wore." She stood. "You're walking out?" "I'm not walking," I said, heading toward the door. "I'm leaving. There's a difference." "Where will you go?" she snapped. "To a place where shoes stay on feet and love doesn't come with a price tag." "You'll regret this." I stopped in the doorway, turned, and handed her a small box. Inside were Rachel's shoes, the ones she kicked me with. Clean, polished, wrapped in tissue. And a note that said, "You told me to smell them. Now you can live with them." She didn't speak, didn't move, just stared at the shoes like they were haunted. I walked away. Outside, the air felt new, cold but sharp like it belonged to me now. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Rachel. "You ruined my life." I stared at it for a second, then replied, "No, I just returned the favor." And then I blocked her. The next day, I stepped into my new apartment, a tiny studio with one window and secondhand furniture. But no one kicked me here, no one screamed, no one told me I was filth. I took off my shoes, set them by the door, and sat down on the floor. In that silence, I smiled for the first time in years. But it wasn't over. Because I still had one more thing left to do. And that was going to leave a mark that wouldn't wash off. I didn't go back. Not for my things, not for my mail, not even for closure. I didn't need to. Everything they thought I'd never do, I had already done. But I had one final move, the kind that doesn't explode. It echoes. It started with a podcast. There's this show I'd been listening to for months, run by survivors, real stories. People who'd lived through things no one wanted to hear out loud. Abuse, neglect, psychological war zones disguised as households. They called it rooms without windows. I sent them a message. Not naming names. Just telling a story. About a woman whose mother once shoved her face into a shoe and said, "This is where filth belongs." About how that woman eventually cleaned the same shoe, boxed it, and gave it back like a curse. About the silence that followed. They asked to record my voice. I said yes. The episode aired 3 weeks later. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. It was just me, speaking calmly. Not sobbing, not accusing. Just telling the truth. That episode went viral. People started commenting, messaging, sharing. Not just sympathy recognition. They'd heard stories like mine before. They'd lived them. Some were still living them. The comment that stayed with me the most was, "If that was my mom, I'd burn the whole house down." I replied, "I didn't need fire, just a mirror." My mother's blog was already on life support, but once someone found the podcast and linked it to her home harmony profile, it ended. Comments poured in. "You mean the same Helen who forced her daughter to the floor? You mean the same gentle parent who said her daughter wasn't worth space? You mean the woman whose perfect daughter got banned for fraud? Brands dropped her. Again. Her Facebook group with 11K members collapsed in 24 hours. Someone archived her posts and annotated them with contradictions, calling it the Manual for Emotional Neglect disguised as grace. Rachel tried to make a comeback on TikTok, posted a video crying about anonymous jealousy and cancel culture lies. But her voice shook, and her followers weren't buying it. They wanted names, proof, and more importantly, they didn't forget. That was the real win. Not that I ruined them financially, not that I exposed them, but that I erased the version of them they spent years selling. They could never rebuild that image, not again, not after this. And me? I started writing full-time. Personal essays, interviews, creative nonfiction, stories about girls who didn't cry when they were kicked, girls who learned to live in silence, and then turned that silence into a wrecking ball. One of my pieces got published in a print journal. I took the magazine, rolled it up, and mailed it to my mother. No letter, no message. Just my name in print on page 12, above a story titled, "The House Where I Wasn't Welcome." Weeks later, I got a voicemail. Her voice was tight, bitter, still clinging to whatever pride she had left. "You're lucky we don't sue." I smiled, then deleted it. Later that month, Rachel showed up outside the bakery where I worked, hair tied back, sunglasses on like a celebrity going incognito. She didn't come in. She just stood there staring through the glass. I met her eyes. She looked smaller than I remembered, like the power had been vacuumed out of her spine. She mouthed something. I couldn't tell what. Maybe why? Maybe please? Maybe just my name. I didn't move. She walked away. And that was the last time I saw either of them. Years from now, someone will ask them why they don't talk to their daughter, or why their last name brings up old blog controversies or influencer fraud alerts. They'll dodge the question. They'll blame me. but deep down they'll know. They told me I was filth. And I believed them. Until I learned what filth can do. It clings. It stains. And sometimes, it becomes the only thing people remember. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video.